Shri Jagannath Baladev Subhadra Mai Ki Jai. Nitai Gaur Premanande. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories, all glories, all glories to Sri Guru and Gauranga. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
That's a nice mridanga, very systematically played. So I'm very pleasantly surprised to see so many devotees gathered here. But I'm not, in a way, it's good because education is something that everyone is concerned about, and especially as householders, you all are very, very concerned about the future of your children. And indeed, we ought to be concerned not just about our children, but also about the children in the movement and how we propose to groom them so that they can become good devotees, they can develop good character, and also that they can learn to fend for themselves and survive in the world. So different types of educational models are available, and devotees are trying their best. Srila Prabhupada has spoken and written extensively on education. And as a movement, we have been through a lot. We have been through many trials and tribulations. But education remains a topic that is so important that whatever may have happened in the past, we have to try to do something that will click for our children. So what I think we can do, because I didn't plan it like this, I didn't realize so many devotees would be here, so I can speak for some time, maybe 15 minutes or so. I can give you some preliminary thoughts, and then we can have a discussion. Yes, it's okay. Do we have any marker pens or something?
Yeah.
In case something just comes up and somebody wants to write it down,
yeah.
You can maybe... now the way I understand it, that there are different types of models for education available for children in our movement today. One thing is clear, that we want good education. And that good education means good spiritual education and sufficient material education. What sufficient is another question. Now, what are the different models of education available presently to our children? The first is the current model that is most prevalent, which is that the children go to schools outside, what we call karmi schools, and they learn with children from the outside world, teachers from the outside world, and then whatever Krishna consciousness they get is at home and in the temple and in the association of devotees. That's model number one. Obviously we are not satisfied with that. That's why we are here. Yes? So, what are the other models that are possible? Another model possible, a slight variation of this, if other extremes are not possible, is that we speak to school authorities where they allow our devotees to come and teach Krishna consciousness, but much of that is not possible in a country like Australia. They have different rules, and why only Krishna consciousness, why not something else? But that's a model that is possible in many places and is going on. So our devotees visit different schools for classes at different levels. They give lectures to the students, they have competitions, they have programs for them. So it's somebody else's school, it's a Karmi school, but they're favorable. So our devotees are allowed to go and give lectures to the children. So our children being there in that school also helps because they get that extra input. The other children also get Krishna consciousness. This is model 2, but I don't expect that to be available here in Australia. Model number 3 is we start our own school. A regular academic school where they prepare for the, whatever is that certification that you get at the end of year 12. And then we give them some Krishna consciousness. Our devotees go and give classes on different spiritual topics. And then the academic teachers are there. So that's like a regular school that's outside. Except that it's started by devotees and mostly it's for devotees, but it could also admit outsiders, but under strict rules. Now the third model obviously is very difficult to do because to start your own school it requires a lot of money, it requires land, it requires a lot of management, administration, it requires skilled devotee manpower, because we start our school and we don't have enough devotees to teach, then the whole purpose is lost. Also the administrative burden will be very substantial, very difficult to manage. And the expectations of parents and of making the thing break even financially, so it's a big thing. Some devotees have tried that in different parts of the world. But I think at this stage in Melbourne it's not again something practical. So this is what, the third model, right? A fourth model could be individual homeschooling. And that's quite commonly practiced. Not common, but it's found in many devotee families in the world, in ISKCON. It is also a practice that is prevalent in the outside world. There are many people now increasingly taking to homeschooling. There are many pluses and minuses in individual homeschooling. The plus points are that you can teach your child what you want to teach, whatever you want them to learn. You can affiliate them to some particular board, so they can be ready to appear at the school exam at whichever level. And if you're registered with that particular authority, educational authority, then you can plug them into the school system at whatever level. So you have a lot of freedom to teach your children whatever you like, the normal academics, plus you can give them a lot of Krishna consciousness. The minus points also are pretty strong. I've seen that with a couple of families. Number one, the load comes entirely on the parents, and is usually on one parent. And to start with, there is enthusiasm, but then the pressure builds up. As the months go by, 6 months, 1 year, and your child may be 6 years, 7 years old, and the very thought of doing it for the next 10, 12 years can be very difficult. The pressure that your child, the entire burden of your child's education is on you alone, is something that can cause stress. Also, the parents may not always have expertise to teach the children everything that the child may require to know. So you'll need help. And if you want to engage other tutors to come on payment, it may be very expensive for you to do it. Another very important minus point that I see in individual homeschooling is that the children don't get companionship of other children, which is very, very important for them to learn social skills and just to feel happy and nice about things. If they're learning everything all alone, as the only child, it may not be very healthy for the child's emotional and mental development. So these are some of the minus points that I see in individual homeschooling. So when devotees say they're doing individual homeschooling, I caution them about these issues. I know some families who started in all earnest and couldn't take it beyond a year. Some went 2 years and they couldn't do it. The next model, which is model number 5. Model number 5 is what I would call joint homeschooling. Joint homeschooling involves a few parents coming together with children of the same age group. And you meet very informally in somebody's house. Maybe one person's house one day, another's house another day, or whatever. So there's no overheads. You don't hire any hall or any school or anything. There's no expenses. Or the parents are taking turns to teach. And therefore you have actually no expenses. And you can decide what you want to teach the children. The same benefits of the individual homeschooling you get here. And the other benefit is that if you want to avail of the expertise of another tutor, then if there are several parents, you can chip in, and the financial burden doesn't come on just one parent or one family. So it's easier to manage. Also the children get company, they get association. You can go out jointly for picnics, or you can go out for trips, field trips, or you can make them do activities collectively, whether it's gardening or whether it's kirtan or whether it is academic lessons or anything. So this seems to be something that is very doable. This is which model number?
5.
5.
Yeah.
So I think 5 has many benefits. It can be done. The only minus point I see here is that the parents must be on the same page, on the same wavelength. They must clearly understand what they're getting into and what the children are getting into. There's a likelihood of disagreements happening later, because when it comes to children, everybody is very sensitive. And if things don't happen the way they want it to happen, the parents get upset. So because of differences, the project may fall through. Because one parent wants it in one way, the parents of another children want it another way. So therefore, if this model has to succeed with all its advantages, there must be very clear understanding between all the parents as to what kind of education we're going to give them. The curriculum must be clear, the teaching methodology must be understood and agreed upon by everybody, and everybody must be willing to cooperate, to put in their mite of effort to help out. So it must be a very cooperative kind of endeavor with very good mutual understanding. If that doesn't happen, this project might not succeed. The 6th project, the 6th model which I can see, by the way, whatever I'm saying is I'm not quoting from Shastra or anything. I'm just telling you whatever are my realizations after looking at ISKCON and our movement in the outside world. The 6th model that I see is one step up for the joint homeschooling, and I can call it multi-age joint homeschooling. Model 5 was same age homeschooling. Here we're talking about multi-age homeschooling. And in this model you could have, let's say, one particular hall or whatever taken on rent, and everybody pitches in, you pay for the rent. And we have students or children of different age groups being taught differently by different parents. Even if you engage tutors to come in professionally, you can all share the cost. So it's easier. What are the benefits of doing this vis-a-vis model number 5? The benefits are, you have a larger number of parents, a larger number of children involved. So more association for the children. When you do your aratis together, kirtan together, prasadam, you go for treks and trips and things like that together. You do joint activities. Children of different age groups can do it together. It's much easier for the children, easier for the parents. More company, the more the merrier. Also, another benefit is that wider skill sets will be available in the parents. So even if your child, let's say, is at year 1 level, and if you have a skill that you can teach at year 3, you teach also year 3, even though your child doesn't study in year 3. So in that way everybody cooperates, and it's like a mini school. It's like joint home. It's in between a mini school and a joint homeschooling. It's something in between there. I would think this kind of system is even better than Model 5. But if Model 6 is not possible, then Model 5 is quite doable. And finally we have Model 7, which I know again is not practical for Australia and for most parts of the world. Presently not practical even for most people, even in India. And that is the traditional Gurukul, which Prabhupada spoke so much about. And unfortunately we haven't been able to work it out. For various reasons, traditional Gurukul concepts in ISKCON since the beginning have not worked. We won't go into the reasons. One of the reasons being that teachers were not trained. There were many other reasons. Parents are not confident to send their children to traditional Gurukuls because of lack of trained teachers, because of a fear of what they will do for their livelihood once they pass out, in case they don't want to become preachers or pujaris or full-time missionaries in the movement. So because of this fear, parents don't want to send their children anymore to traditional Gurukuls. The only place where I know where a very valiant effort in this direction is going on is by His Holiness Bhakti Rasamrita Swami in Mayapur. Apart from that, I'm not aware of any other model of a traditional Gurukul. But I'm just beginning to work on something like that. But it's going to take 10 years because first I have to train the teachers. So I'm trying to arrange for at least 7 or 8 people to go for Sanskrit education and Vedic culture for 5 years or something. We're looking at all these models. But that's not for you. So that may not appeal to devotees in Australia. But this is just to give you an idea. So as far as I can see, we're talking of now, how many?
7.
7 models. So I can see Model 5 and perhaps Model 6 being best bets for devotees here. Model 1 is anyway going on. So you can make the best use of a bad bargain by just continuing. In case Model 5 or 6 doesn't work, just go on with Model 1. What else can we do? Just intensify the Krishna consciousness that you can give them outside the school. You have so many Sundays fun schools for the children, and take them out. All the grihasthas should unite together, go out for treks, go with the children, go out, have special programs for the children, so you can kind of minimize the damage that is caused in Model 1 and maximize the benefit by all of you coming together to do Krishna consciousness outside the school. So it's Model 1, Model 5, Model 6. Right? Now, that's one topic, the different models of the schools possible. Number 2, I'd like to talk about, in case you want to do Model 5 and 6, then...
Maharaj, sorry to interrupt. If it helps, just for the benefit of the discussion, Model 5 and 6 in Lakshana Mataji and Shri Shraddha Mataji are here, I stand corrected, pretty much illegal in Australia. Because we actually have an option.
Okay, we'll come to that.
Yeah.
We'll come to that in the discussions.
Yeah.
I mean, when we actually talk about the practicalities and other things, we'll come to that.
Yeah.
I'll just give a brief vision of everything, and then we'll get down to the brass tacks. Now, suppose you want to do some form of homeschooling. Then, what are the things required to do that? I would say number one, you require a vision. What kind of education are you going to give them? You have to have a vision of education. A very in-depth understanding of what the children need to become good devotees and good human beings, and at the same time to be equipped to handle the world. So, a vision. Number two, I think what's required is support of the devotee community and especially of devotee leadership. If that is there, that would help a great deal. Even though it would be a private initiative of grihasthas coming together, but if there is a lot of spiritual and moral support coming in from devotees and from the leadership, then that would be very helpful and essential. The third thing I would say that's really important is teacher training. And that would apply even if you do individual homeschooling, which is permitted in Australia and other places. Joint homeschooling and multi-age, I don't know, we'll see. But in any case, to do these things, you need teacher training. Many times these projects fail because the teachers are not sufficiently equipped with the skills to do the needful. So that's number three, right? Then the fourth is curriculum development, which is also very, very important. Unless you're clear-headed about what you want to teach the children and how, just what. We're only talking of curriculum. You know, how much of academics, how much of Krishna consciousness, you know, that has to be clear as well. What subjects, at what age, you know, how much of arithmetic when he's 5 or 6 or 7, are you going to follow the regular school curriculum from outside? So all these things have to be sorted out. And the last point, which is 6, right? 5. That is teaching methodology. Again, very important. Teaching methodology means, how are you going to teach it? Are you also going to make your academic teaching Krishna conscious? When you teach them, let's say, you know, a little bit of biology, are you going to bring in Krishna consciousness when you talk about the trees and everything, and the sun? When you teach mathematics, are you going to bring in some Vedic mathematics? How are you going to, how much of Krishna consciousness are you going to intertwine with your regular academics? What other teaching styles and methodologies will you use? Are you going to adopt a lot of group activity, outdoor activity? Are you going to focus more on practical things, conceptual development, memorization? You know, it's a big topic. So, these are the 5 things that I can see that are required for us to consider deeply. Because children's education is serious business, so we have to do things very thoughtfully. What happens is that parents understand the importance and necessity of educating their children in a Krishna conscious way. They understand the problems in educating them in outside schools, and therefore they start homeschooling. But because they haven't thought deeply enough about all these things, they run into rough weather after a while. Especially as the child starts growing older, then they're not clear what to do, how to do, and they get stuck. So some clarity needs to be had on these things. So this is the second topic I wanted to discuss. The third thing I want to mention is that there are many devotees now who are focusing a lot on education, their householders, because they realize how important this is. In India, for example, I know a couple who have a young daughter. She must be about maybe 5 or 6 or something. And they were professionals in the corporate world, both of them. Then they were sent to Germany, they came back to India, and now they've given up their jobs in the corporate sector. They attended courses in alternative education run by different non-devotional organizations, just to get an idea of how they can teach, teaching methodology, teaching curriculum, etc. How do they pitch it? So they gained a lot of insight. There's a lot of famous alternative educational models available in the world nowadays. There's one person's type of schooling that has caught a lot of fancy of even devotees now. He's a man called Rudolph Steiner. Has anybody heard of him? Rudolph Steiner. Apparently he was many years ago, maybe 50, 100 years ago. I don't know much about his system, but many devotees find many things interesting there which we could adopt. But of course there are many things which we won't adopt from there also. So what this couple has done is they are taking some experience after having gone through these part-time courses every Saturday, Sunday. Now they've quit their jobs. They're teaching in the school for 1/10 of the salary, one of these Rudolph Steiner schools, just to experience it. And then after maybe 5 years, they'd like to do a devotee school once they've got enough experience. So I just want to tell you that devotees, there are many devotees who are really serious about this, who understand how important it is that we got to do something. There's no one else going to do it for us. And essentially the initiative has to come from householders because it's your children. And you have to put your heads together, you have to come together and see what can we do. And then based on guidelines like this, you can work out things. In many places, some educational initiatives are going on in ISKCON. Practically every temple, something or the other is going on. See? So I would suggest that everybody who has children, and even others actually, within the movement, should study Prabhupada's quotes and teachings on education. It's very important so that we get a proper perspective. Otherwise what might happen is we might give too much emphasis on the academics and not enough on Krishna consciousness. Well, the fear may be that if we give too much emphasis on Krishna consciousness and insufficient emphasis on academics, then our children will not be equipped to face the world. Well, you see how that goes. That's for each community to titrate it and to, fine-tune your balance. But this would be very essential and very helpful if devotees study Prabhupada's teachings. So one has to know our philosophy very well before we can teach our children. And individual or joint homeschooling means that the parents have to be really on their toes. That means the parents must study the books, the parents must know what to say, the parents must understand the pastimes from the Mahabharata, the Bhagavatam. You've got to tell stories to the children, you've got to do so many things. It's serious work. But it's not so hard. It can also be happy work if you take it seriously. So these are a few things I wanted to say, just to give you a background. And now we can, if you have anything to say about it and if you would like me to respond to it, I'll be happy to do that. Coming to your point about legalities, can you please expand on that?
Homeschooling is certainly permitted in Australia, but the rule
That's
is
individual homeschooling.
Yeah, it has to be
That's
individual.
permitted.
Correct. Anything more than that is illegal at the moment.
Illegal?
Yeah, even like if
two families
are doing, 1 week here and 1 week the other house, there is not.
Really? Are you sure?
100%.
What's the rationale behind it?
Because the idea is that it should be in home school, or they should be in the community school. Other than that, if it's the third arrangement, then who is taking responsibility for the kid? Because the other parent has not been tested to deal with kids. There's no authority. The parents are giving the okay, that they are relying on the other parent. But from a government's point of view, they have got no control on the other parent when the kid is away from the home.
Suppose, now I'm just thinking aloud, suppose the parents themselves undergo some certification, and suppose, I'm just thinking aloud, I don't know whether these things are practical or not. In a case of multi-age joint homeschooling, you register the school, register the whole thing as a formal school with the government. Is that possible?
We tried that. And Bhakti Rasamrita is probably best place to comment on it, because the models that we tried in Melbourne, trying to register a school, the registration requirements are quite
Stiff.
It has to be a proper school, certain number of disabled car parks, facilities away from residential zones. There's a list of requirements, and you have to, and also to add to it, you have to meet all the requirements before even the license are given, which means you take the risk of building the infrastructure and hoping that meets and ticks all the boxes. And if it doesn't, well, then you go and fix it again. So a lot of Lakshmi is required in that. What do you want to share?
The other thing is legal and allowed to homeschool your child if parents are both there. So they're not going to stop anyone if you're in a group if all the parents are there. Like one parent of that child, if that one parent is with the child, it's fine. You can be anywhere. There can be 200, there can be 2.
Yeah, all the parents have to be.
Another thing which is lots of people don't follow that and they can't actually do anything about it. But it is still legal if there is one parent of a child with the child.
So even if every parent is not there, it's okay.
Yeah.
There should be at least one
parent.
parent.
Suppose there's 6 children, and the parent of one child is there, looking after the 6. Is that okay?
Not allowed.
Not allowed.
One parent of each child.
Oh, one parent of each child must be there. So that means so it's still possible, isn't it?
Yeah.
Suppose
But
you
it's also
have,
if you want to do it like that, for example, no one's going to come and check on you, and lots of people don't follow that. But if we want to be legal, it's still allowed.
Yeah. And the other complication we faced I'm not saying it's impossible, but it's the issues, because we have in Melbourne at least a lot of things have been discussed. And the other limitation we faced with that approach was a lot of devotees at the moment are renting. It's not it's not their own property. I'm not saying all, but majority are, especially who have got all these kids running around in temple. Then we get in issues with the body corporate. If it's an apartment or with the owner, it's not registered as a school.
oh, I see.
Too many people coming and disturbing the neighbors, cars coming and going, and kids are noisy, etc. etc. So what is going on at the moment is Bhakti Rasamrita Mataji is doing something from her premises which is legal, and we can talk about it.
Oh, you already have something running.
But yeah, Maharaj, I have a registered kinder, which is but that just allows, I can only have like 4 children at any time, not more than 4. It only allows 4 children in a residential location to be. So that really restricted us from what we wanted to do. And it's nowhere near a school. It's only allowed up to the age of 5 or 4.5. Like when children are 6, then it is illegal to keep them at home. They must go to school, or the parents must register the child for homeschooling. So that really limits us to just the age of 5 for that.
Oh, I see. So what if, again coming back to model 6, if you were to rent out a place where you don't have these problems of neighbors and everything, and one parent of each child at least comes and sits through the entire period. Say you have classes from 10 to 2, let's say. And one parent is always there, all through. Can you fulfill the legal requirement?
Yes.
and then you're renting it at a place where there's no other disturbance from neighbors, etc., you can then potentially you could do something like that. I mean, it's possible.
They call this a co-op, and it is done by outside people.
Mm-hmm.
They do it like this.
What's it called?
Co-op. A
Co-op.
co-op, like a cooperative.
Oh, I see.
Co-op.
Co-op school.
Like a co-op group, like that.
Co-op
So
group.
they
Okay.
do have these little co-ops, maybe 4 to 6, maybe 8 children dotted around wherever they do homeschooling. Sometimes.
Okay, so then that's legal.
It's legal. Just the
That's
parents have
good.
to be there. One parent per child.
Mm-hmm. That's encouraging.
Maharaj, with that one, I think we had discussed that as well. The problems that we were facing is first of all to find a location where you can have children and neighbors not watching, or it was hard to find. And then like we said, we couldn't do it in any of the rented premises that the devotees are living in. And the other thing is also that then it doesn't divide the load. Like obviously that means one parent is working and the other one doesn't have the option to work. The option in this model is that one parent works and the other one stays with the child the whole day, 5 days a week, if you have to homeschool your child, even in a group.
Yeah.
And then you're also with the child, irrespective of whose home it is done, you're tied
Right.
down for those 5 days, those number of hours. You can't go away and do anything else.
All right.
So then it doesn't feel like as if the load is divided. It's like you have to be there, whether or not you're teaching actively, you have to be there because it's a legal requirement.
Mhm.
So then the mothers don't sort of feel okay, they have time to do other things, and also they're just really tied down with the whole program, and you're still actually doing the whole thing just by yourself for X number of years.
Yes, that is an issue. One thing is possible though, that at any given time, there is a requirement that one parent of each child must be present in that premise. But it's not necessary that every parent who's present there must be present teaching. If you're just in another room, doing something else, you could still work it out, and then, you just have to, it's going to be that much of a thing, right? So, but yes, the fact that one parent won't be able to go for a job outside, full-time job, that's there. That's something you have to see. But also it's a question, unless there's really a financial need, the financial crisis or a financial need for which both people need to work. Otherwise, if we give priority to the education of the children, I think that's an investment that's really very, very important. See? So that would vary from parent to parent.
And the co-op can be in a public place, no?
Public place, right?
Isn't like a rented, rented
Like
property
a
or a
hospital,
co-op.
you can go anywhere. You've registered, that's from your home, that you're doing this with your child, but you could be anywhere in the world, traveling the world, in some museum, in some exhibition, some temple, some...
Yeah, in fact, it's one of the important key learning areas that when you are homeschooling your child, you need to take them out for excursions or incursions. That must happen. So they can't actually find you to doing that.
Okay. So that's good then. Which means that, it makes sense that every child should be registered
Yes.
for the homeschooling.
Yeah.
And even though the registered address may be your own home, but if the child is actually getting educated in a co-op in another place, it's not a violation of any law. So you're safe, right? So the point you said about legalities, it would be nice if all our devotees are clear of the law, no anxieties, so you register for homeschooling and you're in a co-op, it's a legally recognized kind of entity, so that seems a possibility. You all can work on it and see if such a thing is possible. Either a joint homeschooling or a multi-age, a multi-level joint homeschooling, 5 or 6. So it's possible.
Just a small question. As in Melbourne, we don't have this multi-age homeschooling, but we do have co-ops. Let's say you have one kid of certain
But
age,
co-ops are for the same age.
same age.
Okay, that's model 5.
Model 5. It's already going on in Melbourne with
Okay.
devotees. So let's say you have one kid of the age of say 4 or 5 years, and then you have another kid. Now, how to deal in that situation where you're giving a homeschooling for first kid, but now the second age is not of that age, or there is an age difference of 5 years. How to handle that particular situation when it arises in future?
Well, I think in the multi-level homeschooling, joint homeschooling, that's number 6.
Yeah, there it is possible.
There you have teachers teaching the children at different levels. Say a 6-year-old child is here, is being taught something, and another teacher teaches children who are 8 years old in another place, in the same premise, another place. So in that way you can take care of that.
That particular model, Maharaj, is not yet available in Melbourne. So is there
Even
any
as a co-op?
different age group co-op?
I don't think it should be a problem. If the principal co-op is accepted as a principal, then I don't think it should be a problem that you have at one place 2 co-ops,
Yeah.
right? It's a multi-co-op. I don't see it's a problem. You get the point?
Yeah.
I don't see it a problem. But what we're talking about in Model 6 is multi-co-op, in the sense that children of different ages are taught differently, and sometimes they come together. Like say for your kirtans or for the Guru Puja, for Mangala or whatever Arati, and then for maybe some prayers, and maybe some classes they can be together. In other classes they're separate. So I think if a co-op is legal, then a multi-co-op is also not a problem. So it looks like a possibility, yes.
But, I would also say that this is something which lots of homeschool families do anyway. Mostly they're,
Co-op.
yeah, or quite often people would have more than one child,
Mm-hmm.
and especially in homeschooling they tend to have more. They're very passionate about their homeschooling, so anyway they may have like 2 to 5, even sometimes 8 children, like their stories.
In the co-op.
Their own children,
Oh, I see.
and
Own
that
children.
family will homeschool all their own children at their different ages. So, say we have like 7 children.
Oh, one couple has 7 children.
No, like if we have 7 children cooperatively between us,
Okay,
it's kind of the same thing.
Yes, yes, yes.
It's maybe not your own child, but it's still
And
your own
then you
child.
have help from others coming in.
But they manage that in their own house, and they have all these curriculum packages that they can utilise or dovetail in some way.
Right, right.
Parents do that.
Yeah, so there it is, you have a practical thing there. It can be done. No, sorry. Yeah.
Maharaj, even in the schools, like I've taught in schools here, and they actually bring like grade 1 and grade 5 students together, and they call it like on a Friday afternoon, it's 2 hours, it's actually called Buddies Program. So the bigger children actually, they team up with the little children, one-on-one partner with the younger one and the older one, they actually do like art and craft work together. But there are some lessons which are open-ended activities, the elder ones can do a more intricate design or more intricate outcome of that, and the younger ones will do more simpler ones. So even in different age group classrooms, they're actually trying out this kind of a thing, because they say it helps the elder ones develop a sense of responsibility and leadership, and the younger ones, they become more enthusiastic to learn, to see others who can do it better and who can do it more than them.
And they feel protected by the older children,
Yes.
not bullied so much.
It builds team building between different age groups rather than just becoming intimidated by the elder ones.
Right.
Maharaj, we will certainly research more into that, multi-age co-op,
Multi-co-op.
which probably means as many kids, as many teachers in one group. If you go with that, like what would be some of the things you can say in terms of teachers working cooperatively there? Because there's
Yes.
too many people, too many.
First and most important thing is cooperation. Everybody has to be on the same page. You can't afford to have your energies drained by differences of opinion that are of a very serious nature. Little things, okay, but everybody must be on the same page. So therefore, there must be clarity from the beginning. In all the other areas that I mentioned, curriculum, methodology, vision, everything. So before the actual project starts, these things should be done before that, so that you don't have to learn the hard way. After the disagreements start and a while like this, and then you start working on it. No, start now. Maybe work for 5, 6 months or a year or whatever. Even if it means letting your children be one more year in the Karmi schools. But prepare for it. Or if you like, if you really don't want to keep your children in the Karmi school for even 1 year more, do individual homeschooling for 1 year. And by which time you've done enough research, you've also got experience in teaching your own child for 1 year. And by which time your research is done, you've got your things together, you've met together every week, couple of hours, and you've worked out how it's going to be done. Okay, then you figured out, okay, we are on the same page, and you get confidence to actually start something. So this preparatory period for a year will be very important to clarify things, as I mentioned here, and also to see that everyone is actually on the same page. And then if someone wants to drop out, it's okay, because that's before the project starts. So then that particular parent comes out of the project. So this number one, cooperation. Every participant, that means every parent of every child who's involved in the project, must be convinced about the paramount importance of cooperating with the other parents and having a joint vision, a joint understanding. And even if there's a little this and that which is not to our satisfaction, we must be, understanding about it. Number two, give a preparatory period for a year. Might take more even, but at least a year. Work on all these points. You should have your think tank, get your core team together, let's say 3, 4, 5 people, allot tasks. You do research on this, you do research on this, you find out this, you find out this, you meet every week. Okay, so this is going to be our curriculum. How many parents are interested, how many children, of what ages, so at this age, what do we teach, how do we teach. Okay, on this part, you delegate work like that and let it go on for a year. Then you'll get a clearer picture. And then you'll get confidence whether it will work or not. And then if the parents feel at that time, yes, come on, let's do it, we are game, then you go ahead and do it. But this 1 year should be spent for solid research and preparation. You can consult with other devotees who have done homeschooling. There's devotees who have done homeschooling in different parts. You can even consult with non-devotee homeschooling experts just for a few tips on certain things. You see? Someone has to go through all the available syllabi, the literature that's available in the outside world, and try to see how much of this we want to take for our children. So it's going to take hard work, but I tell you, it will be such a wonderful contribution for the movement. Apart from being helpful for your own children, you're going to help many, many other children. And once you've done all the software, meaning all the research, and you've set your curricula and methodologies, it will evolve. It's not that it's going to be written in stone. It will evolve as you learn and become more experienced. But the other children coming in later and the parents coming in later will benefit greatly. And eventually, who knows? You might just end up with your own school. A properly registered school one day, maybe 10 years from now, 20 years from now. You see? a full-fledged devotee school in Australia. And it just happened. So I would suggest this is important.
And how do we get on the same page? In before the project, in terms of reconciling our differences in opinions, and also when the project goes live, conflict resolution.
You need a leader. If someone's willing to take leadership, there is somebody who's the right person who can actually lead, even may not be a householder himself or herself, or may not have young children, maybe have children who are grown up, or whatever. But the leader has to be very deeply interested in education and is willing to be the one to must preferably a senior devotee who can keep everyone together and then direct the way the research goes on and smoothen out any rough edges if they happen from time to time and do that. A broad outline I've given in terms of vision, leadership, curriculum, methodologies. There's basically three things. Okay, there's another thing I can mention. When you design the curriculum, there's three aspects to the curriculum that I can see. One is the non-devotional academic curriculum, right? You have to learn your basic arithmetic, you have to learn how to read, how to write, you have to learn a little history, little geography, little this and that. So that's one thing. This is the simplest of the whole thing, because this is already available in other homeschooling places. So you don't have to do much work here. But nevertheless, one devotee as part of this preparatory training or preparation must gather together all that's available from experienced homeschoolers in Australia and other parts of the world, put it all together and see how we can put it for our devotee children. This is easy because there's many others who worked on this. So you wouldn't have much problem cracking this one. The second will be an easy one, which devotees can do. Devotional skills and practices. Teaching them how to sing our songs, teaching them how to do kirtan, how to play kartal, how to play mridanga, teaching them how to offer bhoga to the deities, teaching them how to do arati, teaching them different devotional things, how to chant verses from the Bhagavad Gita, right? Learning verses, learning songs, learning a little philosophy, hearing stories from the Bhagavatam, from the Ramayana and Mahabharata. So straight devotional practices and lifestyle and concepts, philosophy. This is straightforward Krishna consciousness. The third would be character building and giving values and shaping attitudes. That's going to be a tough one. It's not so tough actually, but if you apply your mind, but building character for the children. You can do it through different ways. You can do it through number two, that is through devotional stories. Tell them stories from the Bhagavatam which give, lesson of how, one should be, let's say, humble or whatever it is you want to teach them. That can be done. So I would say in curriculum, these are the three types of areas you'll have to look into. Now, as far as the teaching methodology is concerned, you can have the following parts to it. Earlier I mentioned, right? Curriculum, teaching methodology, etc. The teaching methodology, one is the straight lecture format as one part of it. It obviously can't be everything, but it's necessary. You can't not have it. Where the teacher speaks to the children and makes them understand certain things and may narrate a story and along with that explain the story, explain the concepts and so on. That's one straightforward lecture format. Second would be let's say outdoor activities, excursions. Let's say you want to teach them gardening. So you could have a couple of classes every week on gardening, practicals. Someone comes and teaches them gardening skills, theory and practicals. And you give each child a little plot. That's their garden, and they have to grow their tomatoes and their flowers, and so it's their thing which they're going to offer to Krishna. That's one type of outdoor activity. Or you could take them on a trip to the museum. You take them on a trip, overnight trek somewhere, in some waterfall or somewhere, and then teach them to see the stars, teach them to identify the different birds and plants, and let them be with nature, have some biology lessons there sitting under the trees. Things that you can be very creative and make it really exciting and fun for the children. You can do all these things. There's no limit to how creative and innovative you can be. So anyway, all these type of activities, the second kind of things in the curriculum. And third, well, I guess is something more practical indoors. You could have games, exercises to do, interactive things, right? Practice sessions for developing, one-on-one things, sometimes group discussions, and that sort of thing. So that's as far as the methodology is concerned. Methodology also means that I would give a lot of emphasis, I would differ with a few things of the modern educational philosophy. Modern educational philosophy is veering away from the importance of memorization to just concepts and understanding things and being creative, which is all right in terms of knowing things and making things interesting. But the Vedic model is very clear that memorization is a very, very important part of early education. That is why you find the children were taught different verses. Say they were taught mantras, they were taught scriptures. They memorized scripture after scripture. By the time they were 12 or 13, they knew everything, even though they may not have understood the meaning. But memorization was considered very important because afterwards it would just come naturally to them. Even when they were much older, they would understand the meanings. But now it was so easy because they had learnt it in childhood. So it was just a natural thing, it would just flow. And at that age you can memorize things very easily, very quickly. Another reason for increasing why I bat for memorization is, let me give an analogy. Let's say you don't exercise a particular muscle. Sometimes people have an accident and they can't move a muscle, or they have to just be like this. Now when that muscle is not exercised, what happens?
Remains like.
Remains like that, meaning what?
Stiff.
It atrophies, it loses its power, it becomes weak. Because you've not exercised it, you've not used it. It actually begins to atrophy. And what happens on the contrary when you exercise the muscle regularly? It becomes strong. So similarly for our memory and brain, if you don't exercise the brain properly, then you become weak. And now with the dangers of technology, where everything is just at the tip of a finger on some instrument, what you're doing is you're curbing the brain power of the child in the name of making him creative. So now for even 7 times or 3, probably he'll reach for his iPad. Right? Even if we were to do, let's say, 17 times 13 how would you do it? If you didn't remember 17 times 13, how would you do it?
Right.
Right, but mentally if you had to do it, how would you do it?
10 times 3 and
17 times
Yes, 17 times 10
and 3
and then
times.
17 times 3 is simple, add the 2 quickly, you got a 221 in your mind, it's done. Now, if you ask children today, probably they may not think like this. The first thing they're going to do is an iPad, and they're going to work like that. So what we're doing is, by taking away emphasis from memorization and simply trying to adopt the innovative and creative approach, we are depriving our children of certain capabilities, intellectual capabilities that will be very harmful to them later if they are deprived of them. That doesn't mean that we don't need innovative and creative approaches. As I said very clearly, we must have them, but we must have a blend. Memorization plus these other innovative and creative ways of teaching children. That's part of the methodology. A blend of memorization and innovative and creative ways of learning. Does that make sense?
Yes.
You're following what I'm saying?
Yes.
For example, who was it? Just yesterday who was I talking to? She is teaching children how to use abacus. And then,
Gopi Vrinda.
Suvarna Krishna and his wife, yes. So then with the abacus you can make a lot of calculations. You just move beads on the wires.
What Mataji is doing.
You're doing that also? Yeah, and then later you can use your brain to actually calculate. So now our generations are becoming weak in the brain. You see the previous generations. One time I was traveling and I was usually carry a whole lot of books with me. My books were more than my clothes and everything because I like to carry them. I know I may not be able to read them, but I'd carry. So I met one elderly Brahmin, he was traveling with me, happened to be there. Then I opened the bag for something and he said, "Why are you carrying so many books?" So I said, "Because I may need them." But he said, "You should all be here." I told him, "Everything should be here, you don't need to carry a single book." And that's the Vedic system. Everything here.
My father is like that.
And the whole Vedic system was on just hearing. The children learned by hearing. So please remember, this is my suggestion, encourage memorization. And also simultaneously have these other modern creative techniques, no problem, but not at the cost of this. Yes? And also take them out and explain things from a Krishna conscious perspective. Like for example, you're using, any biology teachers here? Anyone in biology? Let's say you're teaching them capillary action, of how you water the root of a tree. Because we talk of the example in Krishna consciousness very often, isn't it? Krishna is the root, the demigods are the branches. Water the root of the tree, the water reaches the branches, you worship Krishna, and you automatically worship the demigods. So now how does the water reach from the roots to the branches? You're trying to explain capillary action. So look, Krishna is such a wonderful pump. You give them figures of how much water a plant sucks up, a tree sucks up in a day. And say, look at what a wonderful motor nature has made. Yeah? Krishna sucks up this water through, he has created a system and a leaf that breathes. And give them examples of how nature gives a perfect system. Imagine a factory that had some inputs and then had some waste matter and outputs. But the waste of this factory became the inputs for another factory. And the inputs for this factory was the waste of that factory, some third factory. So there is no waste. Yes? So there's always something productive coming out. Do you see such a model anywhere? Is it possible? What do you think? Where? Only in science fiction.
Xerox are doing, Maharaj, I think. They are recycling their obsolete products.
It's
They'll not
just
throw.
ink is waste. Ink is a waste.
Yeah, but
There's many
they'll not
things
throw
that
that
can't
to
be.
hard waste. Yeah.
But nature is doing it. What do we breathe out?
Yeah.
Carbon dioxide. What do the plants breathe in?
Carbon
Carbon
dioxide.
dioxide. What do the plants breathe out?
Oxygen.
What do we breathe in?
Oxygen.
So in this way we can bring Krishna in sometimes. Say, look how Krishna has controlled this whole, how Krishna has designed this wonderful thing. So they'll begin to appreciate Krishna through biology, botany, or any topic. See? Make it exciting for them, make it interesting for them. Take them out, have them live in tents, teach them swimming, teach them all sorts of things, wonderful things which will make life exciting for them. Education should be fun. At the same time, there should be discipline as well. And discipline should be a very important part that should be ingrained in their minds. They must learn to respect elders, respect their parents. They must learn to be well behaved, speak the truth. Things like that, the basic values which we must give them. So these are a few thoughts on what you can teach and how you can teach. And there are many devotees who are working on it. There's a lady from America, mother of
Arudha Mata.
Arudha, yeah, that's right. She brought up her two sons in homeschooling. So she goes and gives seminars.
She was here,
She's
Maharaj.
actually coming here in July.
Oh, she is. Okay, that's nice.
And she's been here once now.
Yes, already
She's been here before.
Before.
They are coming again.
So there are many devotees who work many years in this field, so you can get a lot of inputs from them. So that's how I suggest we can proceed.
Maharaj, in certain cases we can't draw a line between, whether we teach them the material background of something, or like, for example, creation. Like, in Karmic schools, they're taught about Big Bang Theory and all that sort of things. So do we give them that? Do we tell them, look, this is also there, it is wrong, but still this is what is being taught. Like, do we give them knowledge about that as well, or do we just keep them totally unaware of it?
If they have to appear for an exam, at the end of it, they would need to understand these things. But what some of our other devotee schools are doing is, they tell them, look, this is how the creation happened. That's what the Bhagavatam says, this is what the Bhagavad Gita says. But modern science says this, we don't accept it, but you should know what it is, what they say. And logically you should explain to them why. As they grow older and they're intelligent enough to be able to understand your arguments, you should give them logical, point-by-point refutations of, let's say, Darwinian evolution or the Big Bang. Say when they come to the 8th year or 9th year, now they're pretty advanced in their understanding. So you can tell them these things. Why Big Bang is not a very scientific theory actually. What are our arguments against the Big Bang theory? We can give simple answers. Prabhupada has given so many, nice arguments against it. So then you tell them that this is our understanding, but if you go for your year 12 examination, then don't write Srimad Bhagavatam when it comes to creation. Then you have to write whatever they say. But you should know in your mind that this is the truth. That's the way many of our devotees do it. Right? So it's a very important project. I wish you all the best for it. is going to take up a lot of application in mind, but the sooner you start, the better. Because you have children and naturally you're the most concerned about it.
What if they are already going to school and start homeschooling?
Yes, so that's a big step. Then you have to have that confidence and that conviction that, you take the child out of the school and homeschool him or her at home. Or just let the child remain in the school outside till the co-op, multi-co-op model has been sufficiently worked on, and all of you are confident that we can start it and we can pull out the children from the school and you can register a child for homeschooling. So that is the call that each one of you has to separately and individually take. Each of you has to have that confidence and the conviction, and you alone are responsible for that decision. So no one will force you, no one will urge you, but you have to reflect and take a decision accordingly. But I congratulate you at least on the initiative that you are so seriously interested in this. It's a very serious thing. And if you develop it nicely here, over the years this model could be used in other places. One day you could have Radha Vallabha school or something, Gurukul, right? Yes, possible or not possible?
Possible.
Definitely possible.
Okay, so thank you very much. I have to go for a brahmachari class now. Okay, thank you. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Shri Shri Radha Vallabha ki jai. Our best wishes and prayers for the success of your endeavors in this regard.